when we make exceptions for certain marginalized or minority groups and kind of do this model minority thing, like there's this grant, I think the city council put out some funding for hate violence prevention. But the only two hates that it was allocated toward was anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's it. And so it's, you're like, what does that mean? Like, what is that doing, or what is that saying when we say that like these two hates matter more than other hates, than like anti-black violence, or than, you know, like the violence that, anti-queer violence,
these coins,
exactly.
but specifically
for the Jews, and for Asian folks, you know? And it's like, anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate are both real and both matter. And also, I think we need to just like be a little curious about, and a little skeptical about, like, okay, what is it doing, or what does it mean that those hates are, those hates are made acceptable?
Yeah, so we need to really be skeptical of
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look into a crucial conversation about identity, power, and privilege. The model minority theory, a notion that certain groups, particularly Asians, are inherently successful and industrious, setting the bar for other minorities. But what's the real impact of this narrative? Does it empower or erase? We will explore how this myth affects Asians and other minority groups, and the dangers of exceptionalism and hate violence prevention funding. Now, the City Council allocated funds to combat hate, but only targeted anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate. But what does this mean? Are some hates more deserving of attention than others? Does this overlook the struggles of marginalized communities such as anti-Black violence? Now, to tackle these questions, we will hear from diverse voices, including Asians themselves, who share their experiences and insights. We'll examine the consequences of perpetuating the model minority myth and how we can work together to dismantle systemic inequality. What does true solidarity look like? So stick around to our closing segment where a brother shares his powerful perspective on this topic. I want to hear from you too, so share your thoughts on the model minority theory, ask questions, let's spark a discussion, and let's unpack the complexities together. With that said, let's take a look at the videos. I will be right back.
First of all, no racial group is a monolith. There are Asians who study hard, there are Asians who don't. There are Black people who study hard, and there are Black people who don't. And second of all, can we take a step back and recognize how ridiculous it is to compare racial groups in a country that have completely different backgrounds and histories? But in the US, among high selectivity immigrants, African immigrants actually have a higher education level than East Asian immigrants, and in particular Nigerian immigrants have a higher education level than Chinese and South Korean immigrants. So it has nothing to do with Asian or Black. But do you know why we started comparing Asians and Black people in the United States? It's because in the 1950s and 60s, when the United States was engaging in military actions in Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, bringing democracy to Asia and fighting against communism, as the civil rights movement gained in momentum and attention, people around the world started wondering, with all of the racism and injustice in the United States, who are Americans to go to any other country and tell them how to be? So the United States said, no, Chinese Americans and Japanese Americans are being great. You can look, they're not protesting. They're quiet, they're working hard, they're living their lives, and they're doing fine. The problem is the loud, angry, protesting Black people. And do you notice how the model minority myth only ever goes in one direction to make Black people look bad? Because let's take the model Asian who studies really hard. Do you know who else they're studying much harder than? White people. In 2021, among 18 to 24-year-olds, college enrollment among Asian Americans was 60%, among white people it was 38%, and among Black people it was 37%. So among white and Black people it was about the same. But struggling white people do not get told you would be doing better if you were more like Asian Americans with their strong family values and their emphasis on academics. As a matter of fact, when Asians get compared to white people, Asian success is an indication that Asians are stealing opportunities and resources from white people, and that we don't belong here.
Here are a couple of ways the model minority myth hurts our mental health as Asian Americans. The model minority myth makes us feel like we always have to be successful, we always have to perform at a certain level, and it puts a lot of undue pressure and stress on ourselves. So this is why a lot of us feel a lot of anxiety, maybe even feelings of imposter syndrome, because we're trying to live up to this myth, even though we might realize it's a myth. The model minority myth makes us feel guilty when we are going through hard times. So just like anyone else, we struggle, we have our bad days, but this myth sets us up where we feel shame or we feel guilt when we're going through a hard time. So oftentimes what happens is we don't seek support when we need it, and we suffer in silence.
All right, now we'll look at this comment to talk about the model minority myth and how it does not exist. The reasons why I am not white and actually a minority in America. Besides, hello, look at, first of all, there's the bamboo ceiling, which is a term that refers to how Asians are prevented from being promoted to executive levels of leadership within organizations. This is an issue because it upholds systems of power from minorities such as myself, which mainly consist of white people, which means that our point of view will not be listened to and the way that things get done will not change. Secondly, do I even need to mention the rise of hate crimes that happen in America, even though Asian people like me had nothing to do with the spread of the corona? And third, the way that Asians are portrayed in mass media is just abhorrent. We're always either the Kung Fu Master, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, or the crazy guy that, Ken Jeong. That's why Crazy Rich Asians was such a big deal to us. Fourth, I refuse to have my identity erased and the experience living in America being picked on all the time growing up. And last but not least, my dad is Chinese.
But it's something that's actually wrong with Japanese society, and you are perpetuating that idea. This comment, it just infuriates me. Like, not only is it perpetuating model minority myth, it's just kind of invalidating my experience and saying I'm not a real Japanese person, even though, I am Japanese. What the heck? Oh my god, it's just model minority myth, because yes, Japanese people go through prejudice as well. How many halfies do you know that have, older white dads that fed younger Japanese women? Japanese Americans experience a lot of prejudice and racism as well. Shut up, you just look at it. The Japanese internment camps were a thing, and my grandparents were in the internment camps. And I, as their grandchild, now experience fetishization from the anime community because they all think that we're cute waifus or whatever. The audacity of some people. The idea that Japanese people aren't allowed to be offended by things is...
Now, I'm going to explain what the model minority myth is and why it is harmful for Asian people and other people of color. Now, the term modern minority myth was first used by William Peterson in his article for the New Times magazine back in 1966, where he praised specifically Japanese Americans for diligently overcoming discriminative obstacles, comparing them to other people of color, specifically African American and Latinos. Now, to support his argument, he painted Asians as this monolithic group that is academically and economically successful. Now, extending from the model minority myth, these are some common stereotypes about Asian people, such as they are all extremely wealthy, intelligent, docile, and submissive. Now, this arch-the-cyst myth drives a wedge between Asian and Black Americans specifically. The model minority perpetuates the implication that unsuccessful minority groups are at fault for their own failures collectively. And this is done by using Asian Americans as an example of American assimilationist success. Now, this tactic treats Asian American identity as a monolith, while also being used as a palm color supremacist tool of division against other minority groups. Historically speaking, this myth and Asian Americans were used as a tool by the government to discredit the Civil Rights Acts or movement in the 1960s, which caused the division between Asian Americans and Black Americans ever since. Now, the model minority myth helps to shift the accountability from the oppressive system of palm color supremacy to those being oppressed by that system. So not only does it not help Asian Americans at all, it also helps to divide racial groups and keeping them from attaining justice for themselves. Now, the myth of the model minority is based in stereotypes. It perpetuates a narrative in which Asian American children are whiz kids or musical geniuses. Within the myth of the model minority, tiger moms force children to work harder and be better than everyone else, while nerdy, effeminate dads hold prestigious but not leadership positions in STEM industries like medicine and accounting. Now, this myth characterizes Asian Americans as a polite, law-abiding group who have achieved a higher level of success than the general population through some combination of innate talent and pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, immigrant striving. Now, the myth says that Asian Americans have played within the rules of the American system to their own group benefit. The success of some groups of Asian American immigrants is often held as an example toward which other groups should strive. Now, it suggests that Asian Americans are doing well and that if other groups would only work harder, have stronger family bonds, and get over their histories of oppression, they too would succeed. When paired with R to the 6 myths about other ethnic or racial groups, the model minority myth is used as evidence to deny or downplay the impact of racism and discrimination on Black and people of color in the United States. Given the history of that impact on Black Americans particularly, the myth is ultimately a means to perpetuate anti-Blackness. Now, the model minority myth pits Black and people of color against one another and creates a hierarchy in which Asian people are often represented at the top. By putting people of color in competition with one another, the myth distracts us from striving together toward liberation for all. Now, the model minority theory, often touted as a success story, has a darker side. While it may seem flattering to portray Asians as high-achieving and industrious, this narrative has devastating consequences for other minority groups. Now, by positioning Asians as the model minority, the theory creates a harmful hierarchy among marginalized communities. This hierarchy erases the unique struggles faced by other minority groups, such as systemic racism, police brutality, and economic disparities. Now, it forces division among communities of color, pitting Asians against others and fueling internalized racism and competition. Now, this divisive narrative distracts from collective struggles against systemic oppression and masks the complex experiences of individuals with multiple identities. The theory also perpetuates harmful stereotypes about other minority groups, solidifying negative attitudes and biases. Moreover, it distracts from systemic change by focusing on individual success stories, diverting attention from structural inequalities and policy reforms. The impact is palpable. Now, Black and Indigenous communities face exacerbated marginalization. As their struggles are minimized or ignored, Latinx communities are subjected to intensified stereotypes and xenophobia. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities face invisibility and erasure. It's time to dismantle the model minority theory and its harmful effects. And I feel we must amplify diverse voices and experiences, challenge systemic inequalities, and foster solidarity among marginalized communities. By doing so, we can break down these barriers and build a more inclusive, equitable society. The model minority theory may have been touted as a compliment, but its consequences are anything but flattering. We have finally come to the end of the video, but what do my viewers have to say? Share your thoughts as well in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next videos. I bring you another interesting video.